Admiral Vexathera stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring at the star charts with growing curiosity. The Zethkari had explored most of the galaxy over the past 1,000 years, but this region remained a mystery. Ancient records marked it as a quarantine zone, sealed off by order of the Galactic Council 3 centuries ago. "Admiral!" her science officer called out, his blue scales shimmering with excitement. "The readings from that sector are impossible." Vexathara moved to the scanner station. What she saw made her breath catch. The Forbidden Zone showed thousands of energy signatures, massive construction projects, and what looked like a thriving civilization spanning hundreds of star systems. "How is this possible?" she asked. "The records say only one species lives there, a primitive race called humans. They were barely spacefaring when the Council sealed them off." Her tactical officer, a tall Zethkari with silver markings, pulled up the old files. According to these reports, humans made first contact with the galaxy 300 years ago. The meeting went badly, very badly. The Council voted to isolate them permanently. Vexathara studied the ancient data. The humans had been described as violent, unpredictable, and dangerous to galactic peace. But the energy readings suggested they had not destroyed themselves as expected. Instead, they had somehow grown stronger. "Admiral," the science officer said again, his voice filled with wonder. "I'm detecting terraforming on a massive scale. Hundreds of worlds have been transformed. This should take millennia, but they've done it in just 3 centuries. "That's impossible," Vexathara replied. "No species develops that fast. Show me the defense grids." The scanner revealed something even more shocking. The humans had built defensive networks around every inhabited system, massive space stations, weapons platforms, and what appeared to be mobile fleets patrolled constantly. But strangest of all, the humans seemed to be fighting each other. "Are they at war?" Vexathara asked. "Multiple conflicts, Admiral," the tactical officer confirmed. "I count at least 17 separate battlefronts across their territory. They're destroying each other while expanding at the same time. This violated everything the Zethkari knew about civilization. War was supposed to slow development, not accelerate it. Species either chose peace and progress or war and extinction. Humans seemed to be doing both at once. The Galactic Council was right to fear them, the science officer whispered. They should have destroyed themselves by now. But Vexathara felt something different than fear. She felt curiosity. In her long career, she had never encountered anything like this. The humans were breaking every rule of galactic development, yet they were thriving. "Admiral," her communications officer announced, "we're receiving a message from the Galactic Council. They're ordering us to withdraw from the border immediately." Vexathara looked at the message on her screen. The Council's words were harsh and final. They reminded her that the quarantine zone was forbidden to all galactic species. No exceptions, no contact, no investigation. But the readings were too strange to ignore. How had humans achieved such rapid growth? Why were they fighting constantly without destroying themselves? What secrets lay hidden in that forbidden space? "Admiral," the science officer said quietly, "there's something else. I'm detecting massive energy buildups near their border stations. It looks like they know we're here." Vexathara studied the tactical display. Human ships were moving toward the boundary, but they weren't taking aggressive positions. Instead, they seemed to be waiting. "They're not threatening us," she realized. "They're curious, too." The decision weighed heavily on her mind. The Galactic Council had good reasons for their prohibition. 3 centuries ago, first contact with humans had ended in disaster. Ships had been lost. Diplomats had died. The Council had declared humans too dangerous for civilized contact, but science demanded answers. How could a species survive constant warfare? How had they expanded so quickly? What made them different from every other race in the galaxy? "Set course for the boundary," Vexathara ordered. Her officers stared at her in shock. "Admiral," the tactical officer protested, "the Council has forbidden this. We could lose our ships, our lives." "Yes," Vexathara agreed, "but we could also discover something that changes our understanding of life itself. Look at those readings. Humans have accomplished the impossible. We need to know how." The bridge fell silent as her crew processed the order. Finally, the pilot spoke up. "Course laid in, Admiral. The boundary is 6 hours away." As the Zethkari fleet moved toward human space, Vexathara couldn't shake the feeling that she was making either the greatest discovery or the greatest mistake of her career. The ancient warnings echoed in her mind, but the scientific readings called out even louder. Soon she would learn why the Galactic Council feared humans so much. She would discover what made them different from every other species in the galaxy, and she would understand why none who entered human space ever returned unchanged. The stars ahead seemed brighter somehow, as if they held secrets waiting to be revealed. Behind them, the rest of the galaxy continued its peaceful existence, unaware that everything they believed about survival and civilization was about to be challenged. The Zethkari fleet crossed into forbidden space, carrying with them the curiosity that defined all explorers. They had no idea that they were about to meet the guardians of the galaxy's edge, or that their understanding of war, peace, and survival would never be the same again. The human research station appeared on their screens like a flower made of metal and glass. It was beautiful in a way that surprised Admiral Vexathara. She had expected something crude and militaristic, but the station showed elegant design and careful planning. "They're hailing us," the communications officer reported. "Audio and visual ready." "On screen," Vexathara ordered. A human face appeared before them. The creature had short brown hair, dark eyes, and skin the color of light sand. She wore a simple blue uniform with strange markings on her chest. Most surprisingly, she was smiling. "Welcome to Human Research Station Horizon," the human said in perfect galactic standard. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, Station Commander. You must be the Zethkari expedition we've been tracking. Please, come aboard. We've been hoping to meet you for quite some time." Vexathara blinked in confusion. This was nothing like the first contact reports. Where was the hostility, the aggression, the danger that had forced the Council to quarantine an entire species? You've been tracking us?" Vexathara asked. Dr. Chen's smile grew wider. "Of course. We detected your ships the moment you approached our border. Very impressive technology, by the way. Your stealth systems are much better than the old Galactic Council designs we studied." "You studied Council technology?" Vexathara's tactical officer interrupted, his hand moving toward his weapon controls. "Oh yes," Dr. Chen replied casually. "We've learned everything we could about galactic civilization over the past 3 centuries. Your mathematics, your physics, your engineering. Quite helpful, actually. We've made several improvements." This was wrong. Everything about this conversation violated the warnings in the ancient files. Humans were supposed to be primitive, violent, and impossible to communicate with. Yet Dr. Chen spoke like a fellow scientist, eager to share knowledge. "Dr. Chen," Vexathara said carefully, "our records indicate that humans are currently engaged in multiple wars. How can you be conducting peaceful research while your people destroy each other?" Dr. Chen looked genuinely puzzled. "Wars? Oh, you mean the regional conflicts? Yes, we have 17 active operations right now. But those are just normal activities. How else would we test our new weapons and tactics?" The Zethkari bridge fell silent. Dr. Chen had just described warfare as normal activity, like farming or manufacturing. She spoke of testing weapons the way other species talked about testing new foods. "I don't understand," Vexathara said slowly. "Constant warfare should have destroyed your civilization by now. How do you survive?" "Survive?" Dr. Chen laughed, a pleasant sound that somehow made it more disturbing. Admiral, war doesn't threaten our survival. It ensures it. Our greatest advances come during conflicts. Our strongest bonds form in battle. Our clearest thinking happens under pressure. She gestured to something off-screen, and the display changed to show human cities. They were vast, gleaming metropolises that stretched across continents. Millions of humans moved through the streets, going about their daily lives. This is Earth, our home world, Dr. Chen explained. Population 12 billion and growing. We've terraformed 437 worlds in the past 3 centuries. Not bad for a primitive species, don't you think? Vexithara stared at the images. The human cities were more advanced than anything in Zethkari space. The population numbers alone were staggering. Most species never reached beyond a few billion across their entire civilization. How is this possible? Vexithara whispered. War is a teacher, Dr. Chen said simply. It shows us our limits so we can break them. It reveals our weaknesses so we can fix them. It forces us to innovate or die. Every conflict makes us stronger. The science officer leaned forward. But the casualties must be enormous. How do you maintain population growth during constant warfare? Dr. Chen's expression grew serious for the first time. We lose people, yes. Every war costs us lives, but we remember them. We learn from their sacrifice. We make sure their deaths mean something, and we keep growing because we refuse to let fear stop us from living. This was impossible. No species could sustain such losses while maintaining growth and technological advancement, yet the evidence was right in front of them. Dr. Chen, Vexithara said, we would like to observe your civilization more closely, to understand how you've achieved such rapid development. Of course, Dr. Chen replied immediately. We've been isolated for 3 centuries. We're eager to share what we've learned. And perhaps you can tell us about the galaxy beyond our borders. We've always wondered what the other species have been doing. The ease of her agreement was startling. Most species would have demanded negotiations, security guarantees, and formal treaties before allowing alien observers. Humans seemed genuinely excited by the prospect. I should warn you, Dr. Chen added, we're currently at what you might consider peace. Our active conflicts are all minor operations. You won't see our full capabilities unless something serious threatens us. Peace. She called 17 active wars peace. Vexithara tried to imagine what humans considered a serious conflict if current operations were minor. We would be honored to observe your people, Vexithara said formally. Excellent, Dr. Chen beamed. I'll arrange quarters for your delegation. Fair warning, though, human hospitality can be overwhelming. We tend to be very curious about visitors. Everyone will want to meet you and ask questions. As the transmission ended, Vexithara sat back in her command chair. Nothing about this contact matched the historical records. Humans seemed friendly, intelligent, and genuinely interested in peaceful interaction. Yet they treated warfare as casually as breathing. Admiral, her science officer said quietly, either the old reports were completely wrong or we're dealing with something far more complex than anyone realized. Vexithara nodded. She was beginning to suspect that the Galactic Council's fear of humans had nothing to do with primitive aggression. These creatures had evolved beyond the normal rules of civilization. They had found a way to use conflict as a tool for growth rather than destruction. The question was, what else had they learned that the galaxy didn't know about? Soon they would board the human station and begin to understand. But Vexithara had a growing feeling that this investigation would change everything she believed about life, war, and survival. Admiral Vexithara had seen military demonstrations before. Every species in the galaxy had armies, weapons, and training exercises. She expected to observe primitive tactics and crude weapons. When Dr. Chen offered to show them human military capabilities, she was completely wrong. The demonstration took place in a massive space near the research station. Colonel Martinez, a tall human with gray hair and calm eyes, explained that this was just a routine training exercise for new recruits. New recruits? Vexthera asked. How long have they been training? 6 weeks, Colonel Martinez replied casually. 6 weeks. Zethkari soldiers trained for 6 years before seeing basic combat duty. These humans were children by comparison. The exercise began with a simulated shipboarding. 12 human soldiers moved through the mock corridors of an enemy vessel. Vexithara watched on the monitors as they advanced with impossible coordination. How are they communicating? Her tactical officer whispered. The humans moved like a single organism, each soldier knowing exactly where the others would be without any visible signals. Neural links, Colonel Martinez explained. Each soldier has implants that connect them to their squad. They share thoughts, sensory data, and tactical analysis in real time. Neural links were theoretical technology for most species. The Zethkari had attempted such projects for decades without success, yet these human recruits used them as standard equipment. The soldiers encountered simulated enemies. What happened next shocked every Zethkari observer. The humans didn't just defeat their opponents, they adapted their tactics mid-battle. Their weapons changed configuration based on the situation. Their armor shifted to protect against specific threats. Their equipment is alive, Vexthera breathed. Not alive, Colonel Martinez corrected. Just very smart. Each piece of gear has its own AI system. The weapons learn from each battle. The armor remembers what works and what doesn't. By the end of their service, a soldier's equipment knows them better than their own family. The exercise continued. The human soldiers faced impossible odds, outnumbered 5-1, trapped in a hostile environment with limited ammunition. Any sane military force would have retreated or surrendered. The humans charged forward. They used their dead comrades' equipment to build makeshift weapons. They turned their own injuries into tactical advantages. When one soldier lost his weapon arm, he used it as a club while firing with his remaining hand. When another was mortally wounded, she rigged herself as a bomb to clear a path for her squad. Do they feel no fear? Vexithara asked, horrified and fascinated. Of course they feel fear, Colonel Martinez replied. Fear keeps you alive, but fear doesn't control them. We teach our soldiers that death is just another enemy to outthink. The exercise ended with the humans achieving their impossible objective. They had lost half their force in the process, but they considered this an acceptable outcome. The surviving soldiers were already analyzing their performance, planning improvements for next time. Colonel, Vexithara said carefully, this was a training exercise for new recruits. What would experienced soldiers be capable of? Colonel Martinez smiled, but there was something cold in his expression. Admiral, these soldiers are from the Civilian Defense Corps. They're basically weekend warriors, people with regular jobs who train a few hours each week. Vexithera felt ice in her veins. Civilian defense? We have 4 military branches, Colonel Martinez explained. The Civilian Defense Corps handles basic security. The Planetary Guard protects individual worlds. The System Fleet defends our space. And then there's the Deep Guard. The Deep Guard, they handle special situations. You won't meet them unless something truly serious happens. The way he said serious made Vexthara very uncomfortable. If 17 active wars were considered peaceful times, what would the Deep Guard consider serious? Colonel, her science officer interjected, the weapons your soldiers used, they seemed decades ahead of current galactic technology. How did you develop such advanced systems? War is an excellent teacher, Colonel Martinez replied. When your survival depends on having better weapons than your enemy, you learn to innovate quickly. We've been at war for 3 centuries. That's a lot of learning time. But you're fighting each other, Vexithera pointed out. Internal conflicts shouldn't drive such rapid advancement. Colonel Martinez exchanged a look with Dr. Chen, who had been watching quietly from the side. Something passed between them, a silent communication that spoke of shared secrets. "Admiral," Dr. Chen said carefully, "there's something you should understand about our history. Our internal conflicts aren't really the main concern." "What do you mean?" "We've been preparing," Colonel Martinez said. "For 3 centuries, we've been getting ready for something much worse than our little regional disputes." The Zethkari delegation fell silent. There was something in the humans' voices that suggested depths they hadn't yet explored. These people weren't just randomly violent. They were training for something specific. "Preparing for what?" Vexathara asked. Dr. Chen and Colonel Martinez looked at each other again. Finally, Dr. Chen spoke. "Admiral, why do you think the Galactic Council really quarantined us? What did the first contact reports actually say?" Vexathara pulled up the ancient files on her personal display. She had read them before, but now she studied them more carefully. The reports spoke of human aggression and unpredictability. They mentioned casualties and failed negotiations, but they also mentioned something else, something that had been buried in technical appendices. The humans had been fighting something else when first contact occurred, something that had already destroyed several Council worlds. The humans hadn't attacked the Council ships. They had been trying to warn them. "The others," Vexathara whispered, reading from a damaged file. "Now you're beginning to understand," Colonel Martinez said grimly. "We weren't quarantined because we were dangerous to the galaxy. We were quarantined because we were willing to fight something the galaxy couldn't face." "What happened to the others?" "We pushed them back," Dr. Chen replied. "Beyond the galactic rim, but we know they're still out there, learning, adapting, planning their return." Vexathara stared at the humans with new understanding. Their constant warfare wasn't mindless violence. It was preparation. They were training their entire civilization to fight an enemy that had terrified the most powerful alliance in galactic history. "That's why we fight each other," Colonel Martinez continued. "Every conflict teaches us something new. Every war makes us stronger. Because when the others return, and they will return, we'll be the only thing standing between them and the galaxy." The demonstration suddenly took on new meaning. Those impossible tactics, advanced weapons, and casual acceptance of casualties weren't signs of primitive brutality. They were the tools of a species that had appointed itself the galaxy's guardian. And if this was just their peacetime training, Vexathara could barely imagine what humans would be capable of when truly threatened. Dr. Chen led Admiral Vexathara through corridors lined with memorial walls. Thousands of names covered the surfaces, etched in metal that gleamed under soft lighting. Each name represented a human life lost in the ancient war. "These are just from the first year," Dr. Chen explained quietly. "We have similar walls on every human world. We remember all of them." The archive chamber was vast, filled with data cores and holographic displays. Dr. Chen activated the central system, and the room filled with star charts showing the galaxy as it had been 3 centuries ago. "This is what the galaxy looked like when we first achieved faster-than-light travel," Dr. Chen said. "Beautiful, wasn't it?" Vexathara studied the display. Thousands of worlds glowed with the light of thriving civilizations. The Zethkari Empire controlled hundreds of systems. The wise Talnari had built their great universities on a dozen planets. The ancient Vorkai had created art that spanned solar systems. "Where are they now?" Vexathara asked, though she already suspected the answer. Dr. Chen touched a control, and the display changed. Vast sections of the galaxy turned dark. Entire spiral arms showed empty space where civilizations had once flourished. "The Devourers came from beyond our galaxy," Dr. Chen said. "We don't know their real name or their home. We just know what they did." The display showed the progression of destruction. a wave of darkness swept across the galaxy, consuming everything in its path. Worlds went silent, fleets vanished, entire species disappeared without a trace. They didn't just destroy civilizations, Dr. Chen continued. They harvested them. Every living being became part of their collective. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of technology was absorbed into their forces. Vexathara watched the simulation with growing horror. The Devourer fleet grew larger with each conquest. What had started as a modest invasion force became a massive swarm that blotted out stars. The Galactic Council tried to fight them, Dr. Chen said. Every species contributed ships and soldiers. They assembled the largest military force in galactic history. What happened? They lasted 6 months. The display showed the final battle. Millions of ships from dozens of species fought desperately against the Devourer swarm. It was a magnificent sight, the combined might of galactic civilization making its last stand. It wasn't enough. The Devourers had a simple advantage, Dr. Chen explained. Every enemy they defeated made them stronger. Every ship they captured became part of their fleet. Every soldier they killed was resurrected to serve them. The simulation showed the inevitable result. The galactic fleet was overwhelmed, absorbed, and turned against the remaining free worlds. Within months, the Devourers controlled 3/4 of the galaxy. Then we arrived, Dr. Chen said simply. The display changed again, showing a small fleet of primitive human ships entering the war zone. They were laughably outmatched, a few dozen vessels against millions of enemy craft. We had just achieved FTL travel, Dr. Chen continued. Our weapons were crude. Our ships were slow. Our soldiers had never faced alien enemies. Any rational species would have fled or surrendered immediately. But you didn't, Vexathara said quietly. No, we didn't. Our first captain to encounter the Devourers was Sarah Williams of the exploration ship New Horizon. She took one look at the situation and sent a message back to Earth. Found the enemy. Engaging now. Tell Earth to build more guns. The simulation showed the impossible battle that followed. The tiny human fleet attacked the massive Devourer swarm with absolutely no chance of victory. They were destroyed in minutes. Captain Williams and her crew died, Dr. Chen said, but they learned something important in those few minutes of combat. The Devourers had a weakness. What weakness? They were predictable. They had conquered so many species using the same tactics that they couldn't adapt to something completely new. Every galactic civilization fought in similar ways, organized, logical, efficient. Humans fought differently. The display showed what happened next. Earth didn't mourn the loss of the New Horizon. Instead, they declared total war against an enemy they had never seen, based on a 5-minute battle report from a dead captain. We started building weapons specifically designed to kill Devourers, Dr. Chen explained. We studied their tactics and created countermeasures. We developed strategies based on the assumption that our enemies could think and learn. The human war effort was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. While other species tried to preserve their people and resources, humans threw everything into the fight. Entire generations grew up knowing they would likely die in battle. We didn't try to match their technology, Dr. Chen continued. We made weapons they couldn't absorb. We used tactics they couldn't predict. We accepted losses they couldn't understand. The simulation showed human fleets engaging the Devourers across dozens of systems. The battles were brutal and chaotic. Human ships rammed enemy vessels. Soldiers detonated themselves to prevent capture. Entire fleets sacrificed themselves to destroy single enemy commanders. We were losing every battle, Dr. Chen said, but we were winning the war. How? The Devourers learned from their enemies. Every species they conquered taught them new tactics and technologies, but humans were teaching them the wrong lessons. Vexathara began to understand. You were deliberately showing them tactics that wouldn't work. Exactly. We let them capture ships with flawed designs. We allowed soldiers to be taken who had been trained to spread false information. We fed them strategies that seemed effective but contained hidden weaknesses. The war lasted 50 years. Gradually, the Devourer advance slowed, then stopped, then reversed. Human space became a fortress where alien technology went to die. Every attack was met with new weapons, new tactics, and a level of sacrifice that bordered on madness. The final battle took place at the Galactic Rim, Dr. Chen said. We had driven them back to where they started. The last Devourer fleet made one desperate push toward the galactic core. The simulation showed thousands of human ships forming a barrier across space. They weren't trying to destroy the enemy fleet. They were preventing its escape. We let them think they were winning, Dr. Chen explained. We drew them into a trap that took 5 years to prepare. When they realized what was happening, it was too late. What happened to them? We pushed them beyond the galactic rim and sealed the breach they had used to enter our universe. As far as we know, they're still out there, trying to find another way in. The archive chamber fell silent. Vexathara processed the incredible story she had just heard. Humans had saved the galaxy by being willing to sacrifice everything in a war that lasted half a century. Why didn't the galaxy celebrate your victory? Vexathara asked. Dr. Chen's expression grew sad. Because our methods terrified them even more than the Devourers had. We had shown that victory was possible, but only through a level of dedication that other species found disturbing. So they quarantined you. They asked us to remain at the galactic edge, standing guard against the Devourer's return. In exchange, they would leave us alone to develop our own civilization. It seemed like a fair arrangement. Vexathara understood now why no records of this war existed in mainstream galactic archives. The truth was too frightening. It meant that survival wasn't guaranteed by technology or diplomacy. It required a willingness to sacrifice everything for the chance of victory. The Devourers are still out there, aren't they? She asked. Yes, Dr. Chen replied simply, and they're coming back. The alarms started as soft chimes in the research station's corridors. Within seconds, they became urgent warnings that echoed through every deck. Admiral Vexathara watched in fascination as the humans around her transformed. Dr. Chen's friendly smile vanished, replaced by cold focus. Admiral, you need to return to your ship immediately. Emergency protocols are now in effect. What's happening? Vexathara asked, but she already knew. The displays around the archive chamber were showing massive energy signatures emerging from dark space beyond the galactic rim. They're back, Dr. Chen said simply. The journey back to her ship took 15 minutes, but Vexathara watched 3 centuries of human preparation activate in that short time. The research station shed its peaceful appearance like a snake shedding skin. Hidden weapons emerged from elegant walls. Scientists became soldiers with practiced efficiency. The beautiful flower of metal and glass revealed itself as a fortress. From her ship's bridge, Vexathara watched human space transform. Planets that had seemed like peaceful garden worlds began broadcasting military frequencies. Civilian vessels moved into defensive formations with military precision. Construction platforms that had been building cities suddenly started producing weapons. Admiral, her science officer called out, his voice shaking, the readings from the rim. I've never seen anything like this. The main display showed what was approaching. It was a fleet, but calling it a fleet was like calling a hurricane a breeze. Thousands of ships emerged from the void between galaxies, each one larger than a human city. Behind them came millions of smaller craft, their hulls black as space itself. Devourers, Vexathara whispered. But these weren't the same enemies that humans had fought 3 centuries ago. These ships showed clear signs, of advancement. The Devourers had spent their exile learning, adapting, preparing for their return. "Admiral," her communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the Human Command Center." The main screen changed to show a human Vex Thera hadn't met before. He was older than the others, with silver hair and eyes that held depths of experience. His uniform bore markings that seemed to shift and change as she watched. "I am Fleet Admiral Chen," he said calmly. "Dr. Sarah Chen's grandfather, as it happens. I want to thank you for visiting our space, but I'm afraid your vacation is over." "Fleet Admiral," Vexithara began, "we want to help. The Zethkari have powerful fleets. We can—" "No," Admiral Chen interrupted gently but firmly. "You can't. This isn't your war, and frankly, you would only make it more difficult for us." "But surely our combined forces would add unnecessary complexity to our battle plans," Admiral Chen explained. "We've been preparing for this moment for 300 years. Every tactic has been tested. Every contingency has been planned. Your presence, however well-intentioned, would force us to improvise." Vexithara felt insulted and confused. "We're offering our help. Why won't you accept it?" Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly. "Because helping us means watching us do things that will disturb you. It means seeing tactics that violate your understanding of honorable warfare. It means witnessing sacrifices that your people would consider unacceptable." As if to prove his point, the displays began showing human preparations across their space. Vexithara watched in growing horror as civilian populations volunteered for military service with their children watching proudly. She saw teenagers receiving weapons training alongside tactical nuclear devices. She witnessed elderly humans volunteering for suicide missions with the same enthusiasm others might show for a holiday. "This is madness," she breathed. "This is survival," Admiral Chen corrected. "The Devourers don't take prisoners. They don't negotiate. They don't show mercy. They consume everything in their path and add it to their collective. The only response is total commitment to their destruction." The Devourer fleet was moving closer now, and Vexithara could see individual ships on her scanners. Each vessel radiated a wrongness that made her skin crawl. They weren't just machines. They were filled with the absorbed consciousness of a billion conquered species. "Admiral," her tactical officer called out, "the human fleets are moving to intercept. But I count only a few thousand ships against millions of enemies." Vexthara looked at the tactical display. The numbers seemed impossible. Even with their advanced technology, how could humans hope to win such an uneven battle? "You're not seeing the whole picture," Admiral Chen said, apparently reading her confusion. "Watch." The space around them began to change. What Vexthara had taken for empty void suddenly came alive with activity. Massive structures uncloaked throughout the system, not just weapons platforms, but entire artificial planets dedicated to military production. Fleets emerged from hidden bases built inside asteroids and moons. "For 3 centuries we've been building," Admiral Chen explained. "Every world in human space has been fortified. Every asteroid belt has been weaponized. Every gas giant hides a fleet." The scale of preparation was staggering. Vexithara realized that human space wasn't a collection of inhabited systems. It was a single massive fortress spanning hundreds of light years. But the true shock came when the first human weapons opened fire. The energy beams that lanced out toward the Devourer fleet were unlike anything in galactic science. They didn't just destroy enemy ships, they unraveled them at the molecular level, preventing absorption and resurrection. "How?" Vexithara gasped. 300 years of asking what if, Admiral Chen replied. "What if we could build weapons that couldn't be absorbed? What if we could create strategies that couldn't be countered? What if we refused to accept that any enemy was unbeatable?" The battle that followed wasn't really a battle. It was a demonstration. The Devourers had returned expecting to face the same primitive humans they had fought before. Instead, they encountered a species that had spent 3 centuries turning warfare into a science. Human fleets didn't engage in traditional combat. They used hit-and-run tactics that left the enemy confused and scattered. They employed weapons that turned Devourer technology against itself. They sacrificed individual ships to achieve tactical advantages that multiplied across the battlefield. You're not just fighting them, Vexithara realized. You're teaching them new lessons. Wrong lessons, Admiral Chen confirmed. Every engagement shows them tactics that seem effective but contain hidden flaws. By the time they adapt, we've moved on to entirely new strategies. The Devourer fleet, which had seemed unstoppable minutes before, was now in full retreat. Their massive vessels were burning across space, no longer able to absorb and adapt to human attacks. "It's over?" Vexithara asked. "This probe is over," Admiral Chen corrected. "This was just a test, them checking to see if we were still here and still dangerous. The real invasion will come later when they've developed countermeasures to what they observed today." "And you'll be ready?" Admiral Chen smiled, and for the first time, Vexithara understood why the Galactic Council had been afraid of humans. It wasn't cruelty in that smile or madness. It was absolute certainty. "We've been ready for 3 centuries, he said, "and we'll be ready for 3 centuries more, if that's what it takes." As the Zethkari fleet prepared to leave human space, Vexithara finally understood why none endured in this region. It wasn't because humans destroyed visitors. It was because witnessing what humans truly were, what they were capable of when fully committed, changed how you saw everything else. The galaxy believed in peace through strength, diplomacy through wisdom, survival through adaptation. Humans had proven that sometimes survival required something else entirely. The willingness to sacrifice everything, including your own humanity, to protect what mattered most. They were guardians at the edge of the galaxy, standing watch against nightmares that other species couldn't even imagine. And they would remain there, alone and misunderstood, until the last Devourer was destroyed, or the last human died trying. As her ship crossed back into normal galactic space, Vexithara knew she would never file a complete report about what she had witnessed. Some truths were too dangerous to share. Some guardians were too necessary to disturb. Behind them, human space returned to its deceptive peace, ready to fight wars that others couldn't, and protect a galaxy that would never thank them for their sacrifice.